I've finally managed to complete the Fisher build, and it's now one-shotting any boss in the game. Bart King, map bosses, Arbiter, you name it. It can even do it while boosting dogshit newbies. It's also incredibly fun, having several screens worth of clear and massive speed, making it the perfect breach farmer. And if you want an actual challenge, it completes any difficult content with ease as well, like giga-juiced abysses with increased pit difficulty. Whatever you need, it'll do it with ease. Now, I have done 2 videos on this build previously, a starter newbie version and a medium newbie version. So just in case you're shit at the game, go watch those first. Because this version is going to cost quite a few divines. You don't really need all of the gems and items I'll show you though, so if you watch the previous one first, you can see this one as a buffet of techs and interactions you can pick from as you see fit. Alright, now let's see what I've been doing to make this build more or less as good as it can be. But first, a word from today's sponsor, Motto Immortal, created by Goat Games. This is an elegant strategy card collection RPG based upon both Western and Greek mythology, where you can collect deity cards, build tactical teams, and engage with AI-driven gods and goddesses from different mythologies, all with their different qualities. Once you're done drooling over the character designs, you can engage in diverse gameplay, not only with card collection, but also by completing different roguelite challenges, engaging in tarot divinations, and perhaps the best part, you can interact in real time with AI-driven deities, which, let's face it, is likely your best chance of ever interacting with a woman. Motto Immortal launched just now on January 15th on both Android and on iOS. And by downloading the game using my link in the description or QR code, you'll get a whopping 50 USD starter pack that you can use in-game. So make sure to check it out, it's free and it's good fun. Alrighty then, starting with the gear. I'm still rocking the Pole Circle and Shatter combo. We're going to chill enemies with our Sunder, then trigger Herald of Ice, which is going to break armor and trigger Armor Explosion, which repeats the combo until everything around us dies. To have this interaction as reliable as possible, I've incorporated the Uel's Embrace support gem. By using this and getting extra chaos damage, you're going to break armor every time Herald of Ice pops more or less, especially if you also combine it with Armor Break 3. And if you can't afford Uel's Embrace, then you'd rely solely on this gem. This only works as long as you're using a weapon with Gain as extra physical damage though, because Herald of Ice don't deal any physical damage otherwise. And speaking of Gain as extra physical, a lovely bonus of having Uel's Embrace here is that you don't need a Gain as extra physical damage roll on your weapon anymore, allowing you to use a proper bonker such as this one for maximum damage. Alright, the next change I've done is in my weapons. Weapon set 1 is used for mapping and set 2 for bossing. If you run mainly breaches, then I'd go with a Sacred Maul in set 1 with lots of attack speed, as it simply makes the game more fun. If you want high DPS, however, then you go for a massive Great Hammer with just a lot of DPS. The other change I've done to my weapons is the scaling. In this setup, I'm now scaling Crit. This is to open up a whole new level of scaling, allowing the use of Garakan's Resolve, for example, and makes one-tapping bosses insanely easy. Next change I've done is incorporating the Vertex Tribal Mask. The +4 to all skills is just fucking insane, but you can also grab one with a no attribute requirements on gear. And why would you want that? Because it removes the high requirements of Giant's Blood, of course. Having to get 500 strength to use this passive is just ridiculous, but the helmet makes quick work of it. It does, however, come at the expense of some defenses, so for running content that hits hard as fuck, like increased difficulty abyssal pits, you can use a regular helmet if you want, and solve some of the requirements via Soul Cores. And the final big change I've made is including Headhunter. I'd recommend using this one even if you're still on one of the budget versions, because as of recording this video, it's only like 4 divines, and it makes all content easy peasy. Alright, now all of the other gear pieces are largely the same. but in case you're new, let's discuss them and your priorities. For your Polkirkeln, you want to corrupt as many as possible to get either rarity of items as implicit or increased damage. They cost close to nothing, so go ham. On your other ring, you want lightning damage. The same goes for your gloves, as it'll make shocking enemies just way easier. Other than that, though, it's the typical stats. Cap your resistances, get as much max life as possible, fill out with rarity of items, and most importantly, grab a life leech roll somewhere. Then for your gloves, your main prio is melee skill ranks, as it's just bonker amounts of damage. The same goes for your amulet, and then you follow it up with attack speed, because it makes the game more fun. And speaking of amulet, you're going to need spirit here to use all gems. 30 spirit or so is enough though, as you can remove some support gems if you don't have enough. Then you just fill out with defenses, where I'm focusing fully on max life and armor, rocking a shield for some extra defenses when mapping. For your charms, the only one I'd highly recommend is the Valakos Roar, because it generates frenzy charges that will grant us more attack speed. For the other two, you grab whatever you want really. The Rite of Passage charms are all great but pretty fucking expensive if you want the best ones. I'm a big fan of the bear though, as it's one of the cheapest options and grants 20% damage reduction. Oh, and we can't forget the flasks are actually insanely important in this build. Olroth's Resolve is obviously the best for defense, but for everything else, having something like this is actually optimal, and I'll explain why. The increased amount recovered is solid for healing, but the real banger part is the increased charges, because in this build setup, we're going to use maximum rage stacking. We can get 55% damage from the rage itself, and then an additional 80% rage effect from Berserk. The main problem, though, is getting this rage up reliably, especially on bosses when we want to one-tap the fuckers. So the way we solve this is we grab Blood of Rage and a flask with extra charges. This way, we can spend life by using our skills, then use our life flask to max out our rage before boss fights, essentially doubling our damage. And the reason the mana flask is important may be confusing at first, because we're not actually using mana, but hear me out. We're going to have Forge Hammer as a support skill more or less in this setup, where we have the Bataya's Vengeance generating cold damage from our rage. But to use that, we need to freeze. So for this to work, we're going to have Embitter turn our extra damage modifiers into cold, where the biggest extra damage we get is from Ambrosia, which eats up your mana flask charges to grant you extra damage. Cool, huh? Yeah. Okay, so that's all the gear we need. In the planner, you'll find my tanky setup I use for hard content, and you'll just have to remember that you can use the Vertex helmet if you want extra damage, and a Sacred Maul Mace if you want extra attack speed, to make it as easy as possible for you brain-dead bunch of donkeys. Next up, we have all of the skills used. First being Earthshatter. This is how we one-shot bosses. I have it set to both weapon sets because I sometimes use it when mapping, but generally, you only use it on bosses. And don't be fooled by the tooltip damage, because fully buffed up, every fissure spawned by this skill deals millions of damage. To support it, we have branching fissures. Since we can have a total of 6 fissures out, we'll only have to cast it twice for it to max out with this gem. I'm then using this combo, Inexorable Critical with Garakan's Resolve. This gem is expensive as hell, but that's for good reason. It essentially gives your hits twice the chance to crit. Unfortunately, I only have crit on one of my weapons, so I'm not really getting the full value from this. But if you're rich, you can probably double my damage by getting another setup of weapons. Then, we have Armor Break 3. At the start of each fight, I usually hit the boss just once with Earthshatter before blowing it up, as this allows me to break armor and gain a large chunk of damage. If you want to deal even more damage, then you could swap this gem out for a damage gem and break armor with your basic skill or some shit. This in combination with better weapons, and the build can probably hit for 100 million or some ridiculous shit like that. If this video gets a gazillion comments telling me I'm the man, then I shall live up to that and see it done. But I have enough damage at this point for all content, so I can't really be bothered. And then finally, concentrated area for extra damage. Next up is Infernal Cry. We're using this partly for its damage, but mainly to blow up the earth shatters. To boost it, we grab Raging Cry to keep our rage up, Tireless for extra empowers, Second Wind for an additional use, Cooldown Recovery for cooldown reduction, and Enraged War Cry. Since Raging Cry generates 20 rage on bosses and Enraged War Cry spends 15, we can use this combo to spam War Cries indefinitely if we need it. We then use the same combination of gems in Seismic Cry, except for Second Wind, because it doesn't fucking work for some reason. If you know why, let me know. I only really use this skill once enemies are stunned though. Then onto some persistent gems. Charge Regulation grants us 21% more armor, and when get the energy shield buffs from Headhunter, also extra energy shield. We also have the extra skill speed, which is lovely. You can even get the extra crit chance if you use the Breath of the Mountains. But I'm using freeze immunity personally because I'd rather not fucking die. LMAO. When it comes to our Herald device, we're only using this in set 1, and we break armor using it via Armor Break and Uul's Embrace, along with having Armor Explosion for the chaining to occur. Finally, Uruk's Smelting for extra Armor Break and Magnified Area for AoE. Then, our Forge Hammer. Ambrosia in combination with Embitter allows it to deal massive amounts of cold damage, which when paired with a bit of extra freeze buildup in the passive tree, instantly freezes enemies, so we get Bater's Vengeance. We then use Inexorable Critical, allowing us to get a crit for Blazing Critical, granting us some extra damage. Alright, and then we get to an additional new interaction used in this setup. Since we're going to get a massive chunk of extra cold damage, we can inflate our elemental damage and use Rakiata's Flow. And by doing this, we can start looking for maps where enemies have extra elemental resistance, granting us a fuckton of extra damage via Rakiata's Flow. If you can't afford it, just grab whatever I was using in the newbie version in the planner. Combine this with extra aftershocks, branching fissures, which not only grants extra fissures, but the fissures are basically aimbotting when they spread out. Then, Life Leech. You can probably survive without this, but it's so good when you have above 30 ranks of Sunder, as each Sunder costs like 400 to 500 life. Since they do cost a lot of life, however, we can use Atalui's Bloodletting for a large chunk of damage. Finally, we have Scavenged Plating, granting 40% armor when we break armor, and my favorite gem, Berserk. This, in combination with Rage stacking, is pretty bonkers, and I'm boosting it even further by using Diala's and Uhtred's Omen. They don't make that much of a difference, honestly, but if you can afford them, then why not use them? Hey, great job, friends. Gems complete. There's but the passive tree left, and then I'll let you off to splurge some currency before teaching you how to play the build. Let's do it, shall we? Starting us off with the Ascendancy. The first prio is getting Hulking Form for the extra bonus to small passive skills, but after that, it's up to you. I'm using Earthbreaker for aftershocks and Ancestral Empowerment for extra damage and AoE, but if you need defense, then you just go for Stone Skin and Mysterious Lineage. They're all great, except these two nodes. They suck donkey balls. After that, we go for some damage nodes, more damage nodes, and attack speed, because attack speed equals fun. The same goes for all of the nodes here. They simply make clearing easier and the game more fun. Then we go to grab a massive boost to our stun threshold, along with removing most crit damage against us. I also have a bunch of strength nodes here, which is only because I'm still rocking the defensive setup without the Vertex helmet on occasion. And due to that, I need to actually solve the strength requirements. After that, we grab our main accuracy via nimble strength, which we only need when mapping for when we kill enemies at range, along with our first jewel, Chaos Inoculation. To check what this does, we'll have to chuck a Yui and fuck off to Narnia. Once we're there, we can see that it allows us to grab a bunch of chaos damage along with lightning, cold and physical damage, and some freeze buildup and damage for set 1. Alright, and now we go all the way back to see what else we have. Just a bunch of boring nodes, really. Some max life, damage, and a crit cluster for set 2, in combination with another damage cluster for set 2. I really like this cluster because even if I don't manage to one-tap a boss, it'll allow me to stun the boss, in which case I can just keep pounding him until he's dead. Morbid, sure, but it is what it is. After that, it's time for Brute Strength, Giant's Blood, our Blood of Rage node, allowing us to one-shot bosses, and finally, this whole big-ass cluster with max rage, defense, and extra damage from our Against the Darkness jewel. I'm also anointing Goring here, allowing me to benefit from the jewel, but also gain 40% increased physical damage and extra life leech. It's not mandatory though, considering the isolation delirium thingies are quite pricey. Lastly, we move upwards to find greatest defense, boosting our damage when we wear a shield, along with a bunch of damage, max life, and crit nodes, followed by grabbing some actually important nodes. Blood magic, transforming our mana costs into life costs, and these freeze build-up nodes, allowing your Forge Hammer to instantly freeze for the extra damage bonus via Bataya's Vengeance, if you can recall. Unless you skip that section, in which case, eat shit. Alright friends, that's the passive tree. There's but one thing left, and that is teach you how the build is actually played. Let's do it, shall we? For mapping, the build is just silky smooth and fun as hell. You're basically just pressing your Sunder button and everything around you just explodes. You included your dirty dog. The only thing you really need to care about is using your Forge Hammer every 20 seconds, as you'll get the massive cold damage bonus we discussed. This is especially important if you don't have extra cold damage on your jewels in the passive tree, as you'll need extra cold damage for your Herald chaining to work properly. So don't forget it, just throw it up, explode it if you want. It's usually not required, and then keep on sundering. For bossing though, the build is a bit more interesting. The main setup is you put out a Forge Hammer and 2 Earth Shatters, then explode them. But to deal maximum damage, you want to armor break and ideally also shock before exploding them. This is easy though, as all you really need is one manual hit of Earth Shatter and it should be solved. Then you explode everything with Infernal Cry, and repeat if the boss is not dead. Hopefully though it is. Then there are some things we can do to maximize our damage even further. The first one being stacking up rage before the fight. You do this by just hitting a few times, then spam your life flask until your rage is fully juiced up. It's definitely worth it, as it'll double your damage. The second thing you can do is replace your pulse circle. It's completely useless when farming pinnacle content, so if you want maximum damage, just replace it with a high damage ring. Other than that though, there's not much left to teach you. Follow these steps and you'll dominate. Alright, that's all for this one. Now get the hell out of here, swipe your credit card for some gear, and have some goddamn fun. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.